Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee and a terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way. All at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Well, very pleased to be joined by John Perrotto as we talk about the Pirates and spring training. John, first of all, how have you been? It's great to have you back.
Steve, I'm doing fine. It's good to hear your voice again. How are you?
Same thing. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, my friend. Appreciate it. Paul Skenes is introducing a couple of new pitches along the way. He's debuted it. Just your thoughts on his command of it and what it can mean to his arsenal.
Well, the guy already pretty amazing with what he did as a rookie last year, Rookie of the Year, third in the Cy Young voting, and it's really neat to see he's not resting on those laurels. He comes to camp with a cut fastball, with a two-seam running sinker, and it's funny. I talked to him. I was down there for the first few days of spring training. I happened to have a chance to talk to him on the very first day, and I said, congratulations on all last year. I hadn't seen him over the winter, and congratulated him on his awards. And the first thing he goes is, "You know me, I'm not done yet." And he's shown that he indeed wants to become an even better pitcher, which is kind of scary to think, as good as he was as a rookie. But he is driven to be the best in the game, and I'm not so sure here by the end of this season that he won't be the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah, his command, and not only that, but the velocity, but the command of the other pitch is so impressive with him. Henry Davis is off to a good start, another former number one overall pick. He's off to a good start. What is he telling the Pirates right now, essentially about that, hey, I need to be with your club and not in the minors?
Well, I think he certainly has a point to prove. He hasn't done, a whole lot in the last 2 years when he's been in the big leagues, and he's been a disappointment to this point. But I think the thing with Henry is he's a hard worker, Steve. He's probably as hard or a harder worker than anybody on that team. He really cares, almost to the point, if this makes sense, that he cares almost too much at times, and he puts so much pressure on himself. And I think he's kind of taken a page from Joey Bart, who came over from the Giants early last season in a trade. He'd been the catcher of the future in San Francisco, was supposed to be the next Buster Posey, and it didn't work out. And the reason it didn't work out partially because Bart admitted he put too much pressure on himself. And when he came to the Pirates, he decided, hey, I'm just going to have fun, and whatever happens, happens. And I get the feeling Henry Davis is doing the same thing this year. And we know Bart had a fine year last year, had 14 homers in just 80 games, and maybe to take a little of the pressure off, maybe that's really what Henry Davis needs, because he's hit the ball everywhere he's been in the minors. He was good enough to be the first overall pick out of college at Louisville. So, I mean, there's talent there, and maybe it's more a mental thing than a physical thing, and maybe this will be the year that he relaxes and lets that natural ability come out in the big leagues.
Now, somebody that's trying to get themselves on the roster and maybe is a bench player that can be valuable is Matt Gorski. Gorski is 27 now. He leads the Grapefruit League in RBIs with 10. He's tied for the most home runs as well. So what kind of show has he been putting on?
He really has, Steve. I mean, he hit 2 home runs in the game there early, one of the first games of the spring. There's never been any question about his talent. This is much like Henry Davis in that regard. Gorski was a second-round pick, I believe, in 19, Neil Huntington's last draft as GM, and he's shown power and he's shown speed in the minor leagues. He just hasn't shown any consistency. He can get really hot for a week to 10 days, and then he'll go into like an 0 for 15 and 0 for 20 slump. So, I mean, the talent's there. It's just a matter of putting it together. And, you know, some guys blossom late. I don't put a whole lot of emphasis on spring training statistics. I know they can be skewed, and it's a whole different situation than when the regular season starts. But nonetheless, it's impressive to see him off to a good start down there. And maybe at 27, he's a guy who's just a little later than most putting it all together. But certainly a talented player.
9 years younger at 18 is Connor Griffin, former first-round selection as well. He's been relegated to minor league camp, which at 18 is where he should be. But what kind of spark has he shown so far about the future?
Well, I tell you what, I had never put eyes on him until the first day at camp, and a kid walked through, and I went to somebody and said, "Who's that?" He's a real specimen, like 6'4", 220, and they said, "Oh, that's Connor Griffin." And I said, "Wow." I mean, he certainly looks the part. You know, whether he can play or not, we'll find out. But he did do well in the little bit of Grapefruit League action he saw, and you know, some people I trust in Atlanta, scouts and people, youth coaches, former big league players I covered that now are on the youth baseball scene in Atlanta, they all told me that this kid's unbelievable, that he's really, really, really talented, and they think that he has a chance to be really good. And, I mean, these are people I trust, veteran baseball people, and I could tell it wasn't just hype, that they meant it. Mm-hmm. This kid really has what it takes to be a star player someday.
Okay. KeBryan Hayes has the long-term contract. Injuries really hurt him a lot last year. Where's he right now? Because we already know defensively he's superior at third base. I mean, so how's he been to this point?
You know, he's better. He went to Los Angeles late last season to see Dr. Robert Watkins, who's pretty much considered a preeminent back surgeon in the country. And Watkins said that he did not think that Hayes needed surgery and that he could improve his back condition with the strengthening program. And, you know, KeBryan has done that. He feels better, but even KeBryan conceded to me when I talked to him there the early days of spring training, this is going to be something he's going to have to stay on top on the rest of his career, and he might not necessarily ever be 100% again. So how much that compromises him remains to be seen. I know that he'll work to stay on top of it. He's a very diligent guy, so I don't think it'll be one of those, well, I'll do my exercises today and then I'll wait till next week to do them again. I think he'll do them on a daily basis. It really remains to be seen, and I hate not to give such a non-answer here, Steve, but I think the proof will be in the pudding when the season starts and see, because they need him to be at least an average big league hitter with the lineup they have. And like you said, we know he's a stellar defensive player. He's got a Gold Glove on his resume. He probably should have won 2 Gold Gloves in his career so far. But he's a very important piece for the Pirates. And if his career really is ruined by this back problem, they have 6 more years on that contract and really don't have a they don't. Jared Triolo is a good third baseman defensively, but I don't think he can produce offensively what KeBryan Hayes is capable of producing.
Yeah, Jared Jones, I want to talk about him for a second. And by the way, that's not a non-answer. I mean, in other words, you're just giving us a feel about where he is right now. And sometimes, I mean, that's the best answer. Jared Jones last year, 84% of his pitches were either four-seam fastballs or sliders. He's been trying to mix in a two-seamer. What's been his reaction to the feel of that pitch to this point?
Well, it seems like it's working pretty well. I haven't had a chance to actually in person see him pitch down there, but I did watch on television and listen part of it on the radio and hear some interviews with him. He's another guy that's not resting on his laurels. Obviously, he had a good rookie year too, not to the extent of Skenes, but he had a good rookie year. I think he wants to improve, and I think he will. And the thing that strikes me about Jared Jones is he's fearless. He's not worried that that two-seamer might get hit at first while he learns how to master it. So I think he'll stick with it, and he's so talented that just gives him another weapon and an already good arsenal. And he flies under the radar because of Skenes, but I tell you, Steve, this kid's got a chance to be really good too.
Yeah, no, exactly. How different is spring training now compared to the first one you went to, in terms of what you can see, what you can do, who's actually out there, who's not?
That's a great question. For one thing, they take more players to spring training. You have a lot more non-roster players and, veteran guys on minor league contracts trying to make the team. And I think a lot more prospects, a lot more of your better minor leaguers get invited to big league camp than when I started back in 1988. Usually then they'd have around 50, 55 guys in camp, and now they have 70, 75. And, there's a lot more players. And the other thing I noticed is the regulars don't play as much in spring training as they used to. Not that they played every day back in the quote-unquote old days, but they did seem to play a little bit more. And now a lot of times they get ready by playing in inter-squad games on the backfields in the minor league facility, or just now they have these pitching machines, these track jet machines that basically can simulate any pitch of any pitcher in the big leagues, and they prepare that way by taking batting practice. So that's the biggest thing. And the other thing is, unfortunately, spring training was so laid back when I started in the late 80s, and it's really become more of a big business now. It's not quite the same as a regular season game, but there's more of a corporate feel to it than there used to be. But the one cool thing is, the parks, especially the Pirates ballpark, Lee Comp Park, which I always call it McKechnie Field because that's what it is to me. It opened in the 20s, in 1923, so that ballpark's over 100 years old. And, I mean, it's modern, it's up to date, but yet it still has a lot of that old-time charm. And I know people say if I were going to Florida, whether you're a Pirate fan or whatever team is your favorite team, I always say if you're going to go to can only go to one game, that's the place to me to go, because it really holds that old school, old time charm feeling of what spring training used to be.
Okay, so it's interesting. In football, and we're talking about the NFL, the regulars don't really see any time in the preseason games anymore. Thus, the month of September feels like it's a feeling out training camp process, and you can't judge September records at all because everybody's just getting used to hitting again. Do you feel like April in some ways is like that for the starters in baseball because they're not getting as many game reps, or is baseball just different in that regard?
Baseball is a little different because there's not quite the physicality, obviously, in the NFL where you have hitting and what have you. But, I would say sometimes I do think guys probably could benefit playing a little more in the Grapefruit League games. And, like I said, for a lot of reasons, they don't want to play. I remember, for an example, Ryan Zimmerman, who's now retired, was the third baseman of the Nationals. One year, he decided he wasn't going to play in any of the regular Major League exhibition games in Florida. He was going to play all just the minor league games where you can take more at-bats. You could hit in every inning. There isn't as much structure as in the Major League exhibition games. And then he went out and he had a terrible first half because he hadn't faced big league pitching at all spring. So, there's different schools of thought. I don't think it's as pronounced as it is in the NFL, but I do think that the players should play more. And the other thing is, I think they owe it to the fans to put some representative big league players on the field. I've been looking at some of the box scores, and especially the first few days of spring training, not just the Pirates, but in games in Florida and Arizona. A lot of teams are playing maybe one or two regulars, and when you're charging people to come to the game, and I mean, it's not as expensive as a regular season game, but it's not cheap to go to these games in Florida and Arizona anymore either. I think you owe it to the fans to at least let them see some of your big league players instead of all triple and double A guys.
You and I are on the exact same page. I don't mean you have to play them every day, but look, put 3 or 4 in the lineup because, Look, you've got some people, John, that are going out there, as you said, you have to treat your consumer with more respect. Everything can't be a promotion. You got to give them what they pay for. And, if I'm going to take my hard-earned money, I don't have to see Paul Skenes pitch. It's just out of happenstance I see him. But I need to. It'd be nice if I saw McCutchen play. Or, I could say to somebody, hey, I saw KeBryan Hayes play or something. Give him something. Toss him a bone.
Yeah, I agree. And there used to be, it was an unwritten rule that when you went on the road in spring training, that you had to take at least 4 of your regular players and have them in the lineup. And, a lot of teams started flaunting that about 20 years ago. And I know Terry Francona, who I've known forever from my backyard here in Beaver County, I used to joke with him when he managed the Red Sox, and he would bring a team up from Fort Myers. Now, granted, Fort Myers is about an hour and 45-minute drive to Bradenton North, but I used to always tease him. I said, I didn't realize you were now managing Pawtucket when he would bring his team to. It would be all AAA guys, and, you never saw David Ortiz or a Johnny Damon or anybody like that, Manny Ramirez, any of those players when he was managing Boston. Those guys never made the trip to Bradenton.
Right. Yeah, in fact, I see Terry's daughter, Alyssa, all the time because she leads up the Nittany Lion Club here at Penn State now. So I see her all the time. Yeah, that's anybody that – 1 or 2 guys that you're keeping an eye on in spring training that can make a move, be a part of the big club, and you think has a shot to be a ball player?
I like somebody on the pitching side, Mike Burrows, who had Tommy John surgery, missed most of 2023, came back at midseason last year, was mainly in AAA. The Pirates called him up the last weekend of the season for their final series against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, and he pitched in middle relief. And I don't want to base a whole lot off one relief appearance, but he pitched 2 2/3 innings against one of the better teams in baseball, team who went to the World Series, and really looked good. And this is a guy who pitched in the All-Star Futures game in 2022, was really considered a top prospect. He's kind of been the forgotten guy. He'll be in AAA with a rotation that includes 3 other really good prospects in Bubba Chandler, who's one of the top 15, 20 prospects in all of baseball, and Thomas Harrington and Graham Ashcraft. And all these guys are rated ahead of Burrows. But I like Burrows, and I think he's a good pitcher, and I think he's really kind of fallen off the radar. And he's somebody I think has been forgotten, and I think he's a lot more talented, and he's going to work his way to the big leagues.
Very interesting. John, always a pleasure. I love talking baseball with you. You do such a great job, and we appreciate your time very much.
Oh, well, Steve, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's always good to talk with you.
John Perrotto, what a job he does. It's always great to have him on the show today. We've got a lot coming up on the show today, too, so we're looking forward to that very much. This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee and a terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way. Inspections routine, difficult. They handle it all. Quick lane at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you and thank you for your years of patronage.